Hey, I have a second channel. Cube Comp MTDX. Hey everybody. In this video we'll be working on two systems here. So on the right we have a custom build that has former Mid-Tower Deluxe hardware in it. It's got an ASRock 890 FX Deluxe 4 motherboard with a socket AM3 Plus CPU, the AMD FX 8120 space heater. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. It's got a Radeon HD 6750 graphics card. It's got a SSD in there of some capacity and a hard drive for data storage. So, space heater sums this up really well. On the left, we have a Phenom II 925 CPU setup, socket AM3. This build was from a late friend of mine who passed away back in 2013. And the system, I guess, got used by his nephew for a little bit because by the time I got it, it actually had to install Windows 10 on it. I think. It actually didn't have a hard drive in it, but I installed Windows 10 and it automatically picked up a Windows 10 license, so which made me suspect that it probably had Windows 10 on it at some point. And of course, I know for a fact that my buddy did not run Windows 8 because he hated Windows 8. But anyways, this one has a Phenom II Quad 925 CPU. Got an AMD FX branded all-in-one liquid cooler. You can probably see where this is going. Trying to see how much RAM we have there. We got 8 gigabytes of memory. And right now I have a, I think it's a 250 gig hard drive tossed in there. Yeah, 250 gigabyte drive. I think it was just for testing purposes. Just to throw and install Windows or whatever on this thing. Not sure what the GPU is. Let me get a flashlight or the label there I might be able to see. Looks to be a HD 6770. So, a slightly more powerful card than what's in that one. So, this Phenom II Quad 925 is not quite as much of a space heater. It has a little bit of an overclock on it, which from my testing of this thing, it ran super cool, and I think that's partially thanks to the liquid cooling system. But to be honest, I seriously believe that CPU could be air cooled just fine with a solution like what's in this system or a different heat pipe cooler that I have. Because that AMD FX 8120 CPU, even running at stock clock, it is just an absolute space heater. And it needs a better cooling solution than what it currently has. I mean, it will run okay, but it might sound like a leaf blower from time to time when you're running intensive stuff. So, in this video, we're going to be sort of gutting this system here. We're going to be swapping some things around. So, I think we're going to keep that 6770 graphics card in this system, but the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM, we're going to do a little switcheroo here. And probably do some other things to try to tie things up. Like for example, we got that Corsair TX650 power supply, which is non-modular. You can see it's got a crap ton of cables down there. I may end up doing a little something with that. Try to tidy things up a bit. These non-modular PSUs, I tell you what, they're fun to deal with. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I think the very first step with this system is to simply start decluttering it. Get the stuff out of the way. So we're going to take out all these expansion pieces. I mean, he had this thing slammed full of rheostats for fans, and he got an external, I ain't sure what that is, some kind of power supply connection. Got an eSATA header. I mean, had it slammed full of stuff. Also, we're going to pull out that radiator because it's in the way. We gotta get it out of the way so we can get the motherboard out. So let's go and get this stuff out of here. Tell you what, there was hardly a free expansion slot in this thing. Let's go ahead and unbolt that radiator. Wow, all that just to get the water cooling system out of this thing. This thing is a rat's nest. No doubt about it, a rat's nest of wires. Okay, I'm glad that's finally out. Jeez. But yeah, this is like the kind of system that would give me nightmares. Of cable, trying to manage cables. I mean, it's like I'm living a nightmare. Having to deal with all this stuff, and I mean, all these rheostats, the control fans and stuff like that. I mean, that's cool and all, but I think when this thing goes back together, we're going to be using the motherboard to control more of the fans, because this is just crazy. Alright, let's get this video card out of here. Radeon HD 6770. That's what this is. Is a 677X. Here we are. HD 6770, 1GB GDDR5. So, pretty nice little graphics card from back then. Not top end, but definitely not bottom end either. Yeah, see, the fan has not failed on this one yet. The fan that's on this other one, the 6750, failed less than a year of service, and I had to replace it with a different fan. Anyways, let's keep going here. We'll take this top fan out of here. The crazy thing is, this case, it's like, I'm looking at it, it's like it gives you no room to mount fans. When, I mean, I don't know if you can see, but the bottom of this fan, the only reason this fan was able to mount in there is because the fact that this fan doesn't have like a regular fan cage, like, I mean, it ain't square all the way out. It's got this kind of, I mean, it's not much to it. Anyways, let's get that fan out of here. Thing definitely has no shortage of fans. That is for sure. And just 2 screws holding them in. Again though, I'm looking at this case and it's like when you install fans into the top fan mounts, it's like, I mean, the motherboard barely has room. Not sure if that was just like something else that's overlooked in the design of this case. I don't know for sure. Get this little thing here. I'm not even sure what that was for. It's got, matter of fact, the Molex connection is actually backwards. I mean, look at them. They're both. What is that, male? But anyways, feeling better now. I'm getting some stuff out of here. This thing will get a little easier to work in. I mean, it's just so much stuff. Too much stuff. And this power supply, though, I mean, is a 650 watt. Yeah, I think 650 watts is probably a good number for this machine. The fact that it's non-modular, there's cables everywhere. It's a cable management nightmare. Now I was running the system over here. The silver one has a Corsair CX450 power supply in it, which, it could be close to pushing it, but I don't know. Fewer cables, fewer cables had to deal with. So I'm just pulling power supply cables out. So it looks like the guy who used to own this machine put in an aftermarket chipset cooler on the Northbridge. I mean, this motherboard is a Northbridge Southbridge kind of deal. It's got the looks AMD 880 chipset, similar. I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. A lot of stuff that's coming out may not be going back in. I mean, now I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, the man who owned this thing had this thing stuffed full of hard drives. Because let's say he used to pirate movies. I mean, the man had hard drives full of movies. Now, unfortunately, he had a lot of health issues and was pretty much bedridden. So I guess the movies were a way to pass the time. It's kind of a sad thing to think about. But, I mean, it's how it was. If I'm not mistaken, he built this system less than a year before he passed away. these components, like I know the motherboard and CPU, that all that stuff got migrated from a different case. Which dang, I wish I'd have got that case. It looked like a vintage radio. It was really, really cool. But anyways, let's go ahead and continue taking stuff out of here. All these rheostats for fan control. You gotta love it. I'm kind of one to say let the motherboard do the job, because that's basically what this here does. It gives you plug this into your power supply to a Molex connection, and you can see on here we have a transistor, diode, resistor over here, and a potentiometer. It's a little fan speed controller. That's what it is. And I could probably use this in certain applications, but really, to be honest, in these newer builds, I just prefer to let the motherboard control the fans. You know, based on the age of this motherboard, it should be able to handle 3-pin fans, which are not pulse width modulated, rather just controlled off of DC voltage. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and take this motherboard out of here. Okay. Pull this out and put it off to the side. So this is an ASUS M4A 88T-D-V Evo/USB 3. And it looks similar, kind of similar, to the motherboards on the QQ Plexi, which has, can't even freaking see it. Oh, here we are. M4A 88T-M. So this is a slightly more premium board. It's got heat sinks on the VRM for the CPU. But other than that, it's very similar to the motherboards on the Plexi, except the Plexi motherboard is a micro ATX and this is a full ATX board. So put that off to the side for now. Yeah, I really should have cleaned the place up before I started this little project. But anyway, pop this Irish shield out because it goes with that board. And now we get to tear down the silver system. And we'll retain this bracket here. So when we pull this motherboard up, we got to take the mounting bracket loose and swap it over to the other motherboard. No big deal. Alright, so I'm going to move this out of the way for now. I got to take this little ASUS front panel thing off. Because we know ASUS, they love to do things their own way with the freaking front panel instead of following the pretty much standardized design. They decide to do things their own way a little bit. Alright. Go ahead and break this one down. So I gotta pull the video card out. Yeah. Other than that, there won't be too much more to have to deal with in this one. And here's the fan I was talking about. So I put a video up a long time ago talking about the fan failure on this graphics card. I literally, what I'm doing is I took a Athlon XP OEM, retail heatsink fan, the one that comes boxed with the CPU. Pulled the fan off. It's a good quality Delta fan. Pulled it out of its little square cage and glued it in. I actually used hot glue on this thing. Glued it in there, and you would think hot glue would not tolerate the heat of the card, but it has held up fine for nearly a decade. So, and also the AMD hologram you may be able to see gives this thing a nice little touch. I mean, it is an AMD based card. It was after AMD took over ATI for branding. Pretty decent little card. So the video card is actually going to be going back in this one, because I think the 6770 should go with the more powerful system, which would be this FX 8120. The FX 8120 is definitely a bit more powerful than the Phenom II Quad 925. So anyways, set that graphics card off to the side for now. Disconnect these wires. Thankfully there's not too many to disconnect in this one. And the funny thing about this computer case is it does not have a power LED. I mean, the way it works is when you turn the system on, it gives 5 volts to the LEDs on the front of the case, which, hey, I'm not going to complain, because we're dropping in an ASUS board which has the power LED leads spaced out like this instead of like that. Yeah, it's one of the things I don't care much about ASUS boards. Maybe they're not all like that, but I don't really. I mean, I used to deal with ASUS boards a lot more often way back when I mean, we're talking like Socket A, Socket 478 era. Back when I was a teenager. Okay, gotta pop some zip ties here. I didn't exactly intend on this machine here coming back apart so soon, if you'll call it that. I mean, it's actually been together for a couple of years, but it hasn't really seen hardly any use. Let's go ahead and disconnect the solid state drive in this hard drive. And boy, let me tell you, these cables. This one has everything on the side, so a wee bit more difficult to get to, but good for cable management purposes. Okay, let's go ahead and start pulling this out of here. Okay, so we got this motherboard out. That being said, let's go ahead and remove the cooler and the bracket. That way we can install the liquid cooling solution once we have this motherboard installed in the other case. The thermal compound definitely had good adhesion. Okay, let's get a paper towel and try to clean this up a little bit. Now, of course, I will wipe these down with isopropyl alcohol before I install the fresh thermal compound and install the new cooler. So, let's go ahead and take this bracket off here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some electrical tape, just a little bit, on the back to keep this back plate sort of held in place. That way it won't fall loose when we go to install it in the other case. I only need just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to set this board off to the side. So I'll need to get the I/O shield out of the other case. That way we can install it in the other case. So now we're going to work in reverse order. We'll install this back plate and this retention bracket off of the other motherboard, since we're going to be installing that air cooler back on this one. Actually, might be a good time to go ahead and wipe off that CPU. So this one is the Phenom II 925, which is a quad core processor. It's not a black edition. However, it does have a little bit of overclock on it, which that overclock has been running stable. We shall see if it continues to run stable with air cooling. That's something I'll have to test later, probably off video. But let's go ahead and mount this bracket on here. Alright, let's go ahead and put this little header on here. What's nice about this is it allows you to, if you're taking the motherboard out for whatever reason, you can just pop this whole thing off without having to pop off the individual wires. which is definitely nice. Alright, so let me get the isopropyl alcohol. And let's clean up that CPU and this air cooler. Okay, put a little blob in the center here. About a pea size, roughly. Sometimes I'll use that method, other times I'll use the spread method. It just depends. There's a locator. Fan header, which is up here, so we'll install it this way. Okay. Give it a little twist there. Alrighty. Make sure that did indeed seat on there real good. Don't need any ugly surprises. Plug this fan back in. Now this motherboard, pretty sure it can control either 4-pin or 3-pin fans. We'll find out for sure later on. Okay, and now we're just about ready to install this thing into the silver case. Okay, so off camera I actually changed out this power supply. The Corsair that was in here was practically brand new, and while that's not a bad thing by any means, it just had far too many cables for this system. Far too many. So I got this other unit here that has less cables. It should be easier to tidy up and should have no problem running this system. So, that being said, let's go ahead and drop in the motherboard. First thing is just make sure that all the holes on the board line up with the case. I think we're good. Let me just double check to be sure. Yeah, we're fine. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this thing bolted in. Get all these wires out of the way. So I've already got the IO shield plate setting in there. And I'm going to start putting these screws in. Okay, so I got the motherboard bolted in. Not real sure what's going on with the standoff over here. Screw don't want to stay in it. Like the standoff is stripped inside. We're just going to leave it like it is. It'll still offer support for the motherboard. That being said, let's go ahead and start plugging in cables, which now we can say this is the fun part. Plugging in all these little cables. I'm going to have to set it up right and take the back panel off. Deal with these cables back here, because I had these things tidied up for the previous motherboard, and this motherboard has these SATA connections in a different spot, so we'll have to deal with that. It's not too big of a deal though. Okay, so I got this one together. I did a little bit of stuff off camera, including tidying up the cables, which, I mean, kind of tough in this kind of case. I mean, these older cases were not really optimized for cable management, in my opinion. And also, this motherboard has far fewer fan headers than the motherboard that came out of it. So with these two back fans, I kind of had to combine the power and ground leads for them and sent down one of the tack leads. That way the motherboard can at least see the RPMs of one of those two rear exhaust fans. So I got everything plugged in. It's not running right now, obviously, but it's got power. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start it up and I guess try to get into the BIOS. It's crazy on this case, you gotta open this door. Alright, so we're definitely going to have to look at the smart fan curve on this thing, because you hear it's running the fan wide open. So you can see the overclock that's currently on this thing. So it's I'd say it's a pretty small little overclock there. But let's see here. Alright, so we're going to enable both of these. Set it to standard for now. Do the same for the chassis fan. That should quieten things down a bit. Unless this board only supports 4-pin fans. Okay, so apparently this motherboard simply does not support controlling a 3-pin CPU heatsink fan. So I'm going to change it out for this one here, which has a 4-pin header on it. It's kind of a shame. I mean, I've actually worked with systems with much newer motherboards that did support either a 4-pin or a 3-pin fan. Because I have a bunch of these coolers sitting around with 3-pin fans on them that unfortunately will just run at full speed on many motherboards simply because of this fact. So I'll have to change out that cooler. But anyways, let's just let it rip and see if it boots into Windows. I think Windows 11 might actually be on that SSD still. Again, the motherboard is very similar to what's on the Plexi. Yep, there we are, Windows 11. 21H2. And you can see it's running through the setup here because we have changed hardware. I'm going to end up wiping this install anyway, so it ain't a big deal. Now I can say if you have this this CPU fan in a case with good sound dampening foam, it wouldn't be so bad, but it would still wear out that fan in pretty short order running wide open like that all the time. And we are at the desktop. So, yeah, very interesting. I just did a video earlier today on Windows 11 22H2. Now this install, I have the start all back on here, which gives you a Windows 7 style start menu. But anyway, interestingly enough, there still exists a classic Windows System Properties window. You can see, yep, I was right. 2.8 gigahertz is the stock clock on this CPU, and it's running at 3 gigahertz, so a very mild little overclock. Let's get Task Manager up here. So while this is a bit older hardware, I can say that's still capable. I mean, here it is running Windows 11 just fine, and we know this system does not meet the Microsoft Elite Class minimum system requirement to run Windows 11. So, as you may see down here, it's getting pretty freaking late. So, we're going to do the second system in a part 2. Probably in part 2, I'll go ahead and change out that CPU fan that's in this one for a quieter one. And then we'll get the second system put together and get both of these kind of like tidied up. And then we'll be, I guess, finished with our little project. I'll still need to like wipe and reload Windows on both of them, but at least the first one's up and running. And yeah, that CPU fan is just really loud. And I can say this power supply here does move a tad more air than the Corsair unit. The Corsair unit, it was hardly moving any air at all. That's kind of one of the issues I have with those units, is the fan curve on those things is just so ridiculously slow. And with time, it can actually cause damage to the unit. It could actually cook the capacitors and things like that. When the unit starts to get some load on it, that fan needs to ramp up. And you can see this fan here. Well, you can't really see it, but I can feel there's actually a little bit of air coming through here. So there you have it. So the motherboard, CPU, and RAM out of my late buddy's computer, which the case is sitting down on the floor right now because the place is a mess right now, but sitting on the floor right now. Got the motherboard, CPU, and RAM swapped over to this one. So that wraps it up for this video. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Well, everybody, that wraps it up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to CubeComputer channel, and be sure to tick the bell. That way you get notified of new video posts. Also, I recommend following CubeComputer Company on Facebook. A link is in the video description. In addition to computer tech videos, I have a second channel, CubeComp MTDX. Links are available at the end of this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching and your support.